Hello, friends and partners. Welcome back. Sergeant Sarah with another Mission Minutes. I pray your week is going well. Thank you for joining me. We always ask you to like and subscribe, please. It really helps us. And so I want to share with you a 2 Corinthians 2:14 in the Passions Translation. And it says, God always makes his grace visible in Christ, who includes us as partners of his endless triumph. Through our yielded lives, he spreads the fragrance of the knowledge of God everywhere we go. And I like to read a lot of different translations. So I want to read that to you just in the King James, the New King James Version. And it says, Now thanks be to God who always leads us in triumph in Christ and through us diffuses the fragrance of his knowledge in every place. So you may be more familiar with that translation, but it's saying that God leads us in triumph in Christ Jesus. Well, I looked up the word triumph and I want to read this to you. This is from the Webster Dictionary, the 1828 Webster Dictionary, and it's right here at the very beginning when you look up the word triumph. Let me read this to you what it says. It says, among the ancient Romans, a pompous ceremony. So, triumph among the ancient Romans was a pompous ceremony performed in honor of a victorious general who was allowed to enter the city crowned, originally with a laurel, but in other times with gold, bearing a truncheon in one hand and a branch of laurel in the other, riding in a chariot drawn by two white horses, and followed by the kings, princes, and generals whom he had vanquished, loaded with chains, and insulted by mimics and buffoons. The triumph was of two kinds, the greater and the less. The lesser triumph was granted for a victory over enemies of less considerable power and was called an ovation. So let's look at this. So it's saying that the ancient Romans really celebrated triumph and that they had two types, but it was a very pompous, very official ceremony that was honoring the victory. So the general or the person who had won the triumph was even crowned and riding in a chariot that was pulled by two white horses. And behind him was the ones who he had got the victory or the triumph over, whom he had beat, the losers. It says, followed by the kings, the princes, and the generals whom he had vanquished. And what was going on with them? Not only were they following behind, but they were on display in their loss, in their defeat, because they were loaded with chains and they were being insulted by mimics and buffoons. So fools were making fun of them and cheering and jesting at them as they were following behind the victor who was crowned and riding in a horse-drawn chariot. Wow, what a way to celebrate triumph. Well, friends, that's what this verse right here said. It said, Now thanks be to God who always causes us to triumph. We're the ones crowned and riding in the horse drawn chariot with our enemy, the devil, behind us, chained and being mimicked and laughed at and called a fool because the victory was already won by Jesus and we share in his victory and his triumph. That's what triumph means, is that we're seated and crowned in the chariot with the enemy chained behind us on display for everybody to see as we march around our city and our area and our church and in the world. He's being seen and displayed as the loser, and we're being recognized as the ones that triumph. God always makes his grace visible in Christ, who includes us as partners in his endless triumph. We have partnered in the triumph that Jesus Christ won for us on the cross with the death, the burial, and the grave. And through, this is what's so beautiful then it says through our yielded lives, after we walk and observe and partake in that partnership and that triumph with him, then our yielded lives, he spreads the fragrance of the knowledge of God everywhere we go. People see the triumph and the victory in our lives, and it's like a fragrance spreading. Wow, that is so beautiful. I'm so thankful for His word and His triumph. You are more than a conqueror. You have triumph. You share in the triumph that Jesus Christ won as His son and His daughter. Thank God. Well, thank you for joining me, Sergeant Sarah. This has been another Mission Minutes, and I will see you next time.